there are various levels of Brahman realization, realizing the Brahman in various ways. And the lowest realization is called as the Annamaya realization, which is the lowest level of realization, where it's basically bodily consciousness. But we, even within bodily consciousness, there are grades. So this is the lowest level of bodily consciousness, where there is not much, there is no much understanding or realization than just the external form of the body. So that is why it is based on the consciousness of food. It is, we saw this table, that the physical body is made of food and matter. So when one thinks, I am this body, which is made of food and matter. So when I eat and when I keep my body healthy and comfortable, and that is the main purpose of everything. What's the use of living? You can't eat well and maintain your body. So that's the underlying consciousness. And I know in my native language, there is a saying, like there is a particular thinker, he said, grow your body, grow yourself. So it seems, what you call, no, not a common sense thing to consider so much with the body, but it is very common. And people are very much attached to food also. So in this level of realization, the immediate understanding or the prominent understanding is, I am this body. And the identification with the gross body and senses and their needs is very strong. And that is the whole purpose of existence, pretty much. And that is how they are seeing Brahman. Means they are seeing, what do you call, we're all looking for God, but at this level of consciousness, almost food and maintaining the body is their maximum realization. And this is a gross material lowest level of awareness. So surely it is not the true self, because the soul is just the user of the body. So that's why the Bhagavad Gita begins with describing the difference between the body and the soul. And Prabhupada also repeated this knowledge very much. Devotees care for the body as a temple of God. So this is our understanding. This is our Gaudiya perspective. That how do we deal with this? So we understand there is a difference between the body and the soul. And then we use the body in the service of the Lord. And Prabhupada also devoted a huge amount of time in describing this particular knowledge, that we are not this body, we are a spirit soul. Because that's the lowest level of consciousness. And even hippies were also, like, though they were having a higher, what do you call, spiritual quest, they were seeing body as the means to achieve spiritual realization, in the sense of taking psychedelics, body and the mind. So just by the manipulation of that, they thought that is achieving a spiritual state, and experiencing higher levels of realization is just through manipulating the body and the mind. However, that's why Prabhupada mainly wanted to get this point out, that no, you're different from this body and the mind. You have to work on the level of soul and consciousness in order to sustainably evolve spiritually. So that is why he focuses on this concept that we are not this body, we are a spirit soul. And the second level of consciousness is, this is also bodily consciousness. These are all about the existence of the body. Sat level. There is Sat. So these first three levels are pretty much Sat level of, what do you call, like existential consciousness, especially the first two. Manomaya is also like that, but it involves a little bit more about the expressive side, awareness side. However, the first two levels are very strongly existential level of consciousness. They say survival of the fittest and all these things. So it's the very existential level of consciousness, that level of a struggle and identification with that existence. And the second level, the pranamaya, here the main connection is with not just the body itself, but keeping the body alive, in terms of, it's not that the identification is with the protection of life. That instinct for safety of the body is very strong. So here the focus is on living healthy, being strong, and self-preservation. So life air is called as prana in the Ayurveda. So this is different from consciousness. So that's why we call pranayam. That means the breathing. So we regulate the air, because the air actually manages many things within it is a vital force. It is managing everything within the body. And the life air this is called as life air because once when the soul leaves the body, then there is no airflow. So according to the Ayurveda, the soul is suspended in 5 kinds of air. So these life airs should be balanced, and when there is imbalance in the life air, there is actually disease in the body. So that is why Ayurveda prefers always. Okay, is my sound okay?
Yes, it's fine.
It's fine. Okay. See if it is from your side.
No, it's fine for me as well.
Okay. So move the mic closer to me. Okay. As I was saying, the pranamaya is basically according to the Ayurveda. So when there is disturbance in this prana, then there is disease. And in order to have health, the Ayurveda always focuses on balancing all these air. So that's why we do pranayam and yogas and all these things. It's all balancing this prana. And that is awareness of the life energy. However, prana is not the thing that is not the only thing that keeps the life. It's the soul. Because of the presence of the soul, the body is alive. And prana is a means to facilitate or regulate the body and keep the body healthy. So the prana is dependent on the soul. It's not the other way. When the soul leaves, there is no more prana in the body. However, on this level of pranamaya consciousness, the life air means the life itself. People are all of us love life. It's not that someone comes with a gun outside my door. I'm like, okay, yes, kill me. I don't mind. So it's a very natural instinct to protect life. But here, to think all the time that about survival and being that instinct for safety and dominance is very strong. And that is the level of it is not just about the food, it's not about the appearance. The attachment is about the existence of the body. So that is the pranamaya consciousness. So here it is awareness of life energy. Happiness means to survive and flourish without threat. So that is the predominant consciousness. And the manomaya level is the next level is manomaya, because between annamaya and pranamaya, they both are bodily consciousness, but the pranamaya is subtler. It's beyond the gross body. It's about existence of the body. And the manomaya this is where arts and culture and all of these things begin. This is little bit of on the border of the awareness side. Sat and Chit. So the Manomaya and Vijnanamaya is more about Chit. So Manomaya is the mind, thoughts, and emotions. And here, this identification is with one's thoughts, one's intellectual ability, one's artistic ability. So there is this particular Western thinker, he said, I think, so I am. So their idea is what differentiates human beings from animals is man can think. However, the reality is the animals also can think. However, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad, you're a spirit soul, so you think, and you have a human body. So there is a certain level of consciousness, animal body, certain level of consciousness. So even when I say, for example, I go into coma, it's not that I don't exist. The soul is always existing. So just because the soul is given a mind and given a body, that is why we are able to interact with it. The idea is about the expression of one's thoughts and emotions and intellectual and abilities. So the focus is on ideas, feelings, and worldly knowledge. So there is moral and logical reasoning that develops, but the reasoning is very much dependent upon material perspectives. So there is morality, there is logical reasoning, science, and all of these things. It's all the best materialistic civilization can get is mano. The best of the materialistic civilizations without spiritual knowledge, the best of the consciousness they can develop is manomaya, because vijnanamaya is on the level of the soul. But manomaya is the best that material civilizations can get without God consciousness. All kinds of moral, logical, social, scientific developments that we can observe in a society without God consciousness is around this platform of Maya. So this is the best we can get without God consciousness. So here also morality will exist, and all kinds of good qualities and all kinds of spiritual and scientific, not spiritual, scientific advancements and social advancement, culture and civilization and arts, all of these things can thrive. And the best it can get is the Manomaya. However, if someone is trying to think beyond all of these things, okay, there is economic development and there is social structures and civilizational advancement. However, there must be something beyond all these things. So Socrates can be considered like a good example of in general, like without thinking of the Vedic fold in general. If you see, he's a person who didn't quote Bhagavad Gita or anything, but he was very much strong about understanding and identifying on the spirit level. So when he was given the poison to be killed, and he said, okay, if you can catch me, you can kill me. So he was speaking on that level of the spirit soul. This is how can you catch the spirit soul? However, the connection between the soul and the supreme is not emphasized or is not explored on this level of consciousness. It's pretty much that so far in the first three levels, either the identification was on the level of body or on the level of the mind and intelligence. Now, beyond the body and the mind and the intelligence, first level of consciousness where the identification is with the spirit soul is Vigmaya and Krishna. And however, there is no clarity that what is our connection with the Supreme Lord. So that is why it is the preliminary level of spiritual realization that I am not matter, I am not body, I'm not this mind or my thoughts or feelings, but I'm a spirit soul who's beyond the body and the mind. So this is the Vigmaya. Usually, Brahmavadis are like impersonalists. They are in this level of realization. They constantly practice neti. Neti means not this, but I am the spirit soul. So the connection between the soul and the supreme soul or the super soul is not very much emphasized. The focus is on the soul. However, this is a spiritual level of consciousness, very different from the first three. So the discerning intelligence and the awareness of the soul keeps it apart, sets it apart from the first three levels. Here, there is focus on spiritual truth and self awareness. So one perceives the difference between matter and the spirit. And surely, because of this level of realization, there is peace, there is detachment, there is equanimity, what we call as Brahma Bhuta stage. And there is no lamentation or hankering. And Bhagavad Gita also speaks about this, calls as Brahma Bhuta realization. This is called as also Brahman realization. The soul distinguishes itself from the body and the mind, Kshetragya and Kshetra. So this is liberation from gross ignorance. However, without recognizing the super soul, the Paramatma, this level of realization remains incomplete. And within the Gaudiya teachings, we are encouraged to go beyond the impersonal self realization to develop a personal relationship with God. Maya, Vijnana level of realization should lead to Maya realization, but because Ananda is possible. Of course, in the level of Brahman realization, also some Ananda is possible. However, the real Ananda, the complete Ananda, is possible only in the level of connection with the Supreme Lord, because love needs two people. Love is a relationship, and love is experienced in a relationship, and love needs two objects: the one who loves and the other one who is loved. So similarly, Anandamaya means bliss sheath. So this is achieved on the level of love of God. So that experience of spiritual bliss and wholeness and focused on love and devotion, serving with the Supreme Lord, being one with in purpose, in the service of the Lord. That I am an eternal servant of Krishna, full of I'm an eternal servant of Krishna includes Sat and Chit. And that servant, being a servant of Krishna, produces joy, because already Sat is involved, because I know eternal. And servant of Krishna means there is awareness and activity, expression, and through that service, joy is produced. So I'm an eternal servant of Krishna includes Sat and Ananda, everything. So I am a spirit soul only includes Sat, and awareness is also, of course, there. So identification with one's true spiritual nature in relationship with Krishna makes the realization complete and produces what we call as prema. And in that divine love, the soul is completely happy. And this is a pure spiritual platform, the highest spiritual platform. Even within this, also, there are stages. And because these 5 levels of realizations is one way to look at spiritual evolution. But there are many ways of looking at spiritual evolution. Can any of you think of another way that some of our acharyas have given within the Gaudiya lineage? The same kind of levels of different levels of spiritual advancement. Can you think of something? A different way to look at spiritual realization and achieving prema?
Is it
Yes.
is it the Talya and Sakya, all the rasa?
Yes, the rasas are the moods on the level of prema, but there are also there are stages which leads to that level of realization of different rasas. Have you heard of bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, and anasakti, and bhava, and prema? So Rupa Goswami looks at the spiritual evolution. He says it all begins with faith. So straight almost he comes to that level. He says, okay, if you have a little faith and take association of devotees, which is sadhus, and then you engage in your spiritual practice, then what is obstructing the bhakti in the heart, those things are all cleared, and then you attain nishta, steady faith, and from there you develop taste and attachment and bhava and prema. So this is another lens to look at it. However, this is another lens to look at it. So they are all speaking the same things, but the details are going to be different. It's the different ways of looking at the same evolution of spiritual consciousness. There can be many other things also. I can think of, what do you call it? There is another particular thing I know is it speaks of 5 levels of consciousness itself, that like that. That means budding level of consciousness. And I'm just looking up for it because I forgot it. Yeah. Our writes in his Jaiva Dharma book that he speaks about that. He says there are 5 kinds of consciousness, which is completely covered consciousness, which is Chetana, and there is contracted consciousness, there is Sankuchita consciousness, and there is budding consciousness, slightly budding, that is Mukulita, and there is developed consciousness, there is Chetana, and there is fully developed consciousness, this is Chetana. So he says the jivas with the bodies of trees, creepers, grass, stone, they're all like completely covered up. So that is called as the achadita consciousness. Their awareness of that level is completely covered. It's the lowest stage, even as jiva can actually fall. Like Ahalya was made into a stone, and Kuvera and Manigriva, they were made into a Yamalarjuna tree, and then there was the saptatala trees and all these. So that is the when a grave offense is done, sometimes they are being brought down to that level of complete covered consciousness. Of course, these are special cases, I'm saying. They did remember Arjuna, like trees like the Nalakuvar and Manigriva remembered Krishna's pastimes even there. So that's even worse. To be in the form of tree and have full consciousness is the worst. It's like someone completely covers my head with a, what do you call it, with a cover, and then completely ties me down, and then I'm fully aware, and like then I'm going to be completely fearful. So it can be worse. And then there is bees, birds, snakes, fish, aquatics, mosquitoes, and various other similar creatures. They all have contracted consciousness, shrunken consciousness. So the consciousness of all these different like animals and birds and these jivas is apparent to some degree. So is they're all like different degrees. They're within the animals also, they may have different degrees, like a mosquito and what a cow can experience is different. There is some difference in there, but still they are all on the covered category. They are basically, they can perform eating, sleeping, they can move around freely, unlike the stone or grass or a creeper or a tree. They can move around, and they can even quarrel with each others for things that they consider their property. So they very clearly show fear, and they can become angry when they see injustice. And you can see this in the animals. However, they have no knowledge of the spiritual world, because even monkeys can have some, what you call, logical intelligence. You can see animals, dogs, cows, and they express affection. They can think logically. They have some idea of what will or will not happen in the future. And they also have the quality of being grateful, some animals. So they can develop good knowledge about various subjects. Despite all these attributes, they usually do not have a propensity for inquiring about higher subject matters, especially the supreme. So their consciousness is contracted. And then there are conditioned jivas with human bodies fall into three categories. Human bodies can be either chetana or purna, that is slightly budding consciousness all human beings have. However, if that consciousness has to become developed consciousness, then you need spiritual practice. And that spiritual practice can eventually lead fully developed consciousness. So usually humans can be divided into immoral atheist, moral atheist, moral theist, and it's not just they are not just moral theists, but they are also active practitioners of spirituality. And sadhana, that is the fourth category. Fifth category can be called as bhava bhaktas, one who have achieved realization of the supreme. So those who are like knowingly or unknowingly atheist or either immoral or moral, because there is nothing in atheism which makes anyone a good person. So many people think, oh, like morality is more than enough, and why do you need actually spirituality? However, there is also this reality that there is nothing in the atheistic philosophy that makes anyone moral. A moral person can be an atheist, but an atheistic person does not. Atheism per se, the philosophy of atheism does not make anyone moral. However, you can always find some atheists who are also moral. That's a different story. So these are the five categories of consciousness within five kinds of people within the level of the human level of consciousness. Either they are immoral atheists, moral atheists, or they are moral theists, or they are sadhana bhaktas where they are actively engaging in kind of some spiritual practice, or they have achieved a complete realization of the supreme. So they can be slightly budding consciousness, which is the immoral atheist, moral atheist, and moral theist. Developed consciousness, because it's a bhakti where we are gradually becoming more humble, more tolerant, more spiritually inclined, some amount of realization of Krishna, attraction towards Krishna. So we are all in Vikasita Chetana. We are also all trying to open our consciousness gradually. But when we completely perfect the path of bhakti, then we become Purna. So those who develop interest in sadhana bhakti, according to the Shastra, are called as sadhana bhaktas. So we are following Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and we're trying to take inspiration from these things and guide our life accordingly. So then we all fall under the category of sadhana bhaktas. But when we develop prema, when we develop some love for Krishna, then they are called as bhava bhaktas. So both moral and immoral atheists, they have slightly budding consciousness. Moral theists and sadhana bhaktas have developed consciousness, and bhava bhaktas have fully developed consciousness. So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Jaiva Dharma. So that is another level of kind of looking at the spiritual evolution. So what I mainly wanted to say was there are various levels of looking at the spiritual evolution. This is one way of looking at spiritual evolution, that how we all begin with gross level of consciousness. I am this body, and whatever I eat is making this body. So for me, food is the most important thing, and that is the main way that I keep up myself. I am this body and everything, and that body is upkept, and upkeeping is done through food. So that's a very gross level of seeing who am I. And then the existence, like the body is there, but the idea is about existence. If you understand, there is a life. I need to protect that life. And then the next level is more about my thoughts, and it's not about my survival anymore. I don't care about just the survival. It is my right to live. It's my right to exist. However, I need to be able to express my ideas, express my thoughts, express my skills and abilities. And that's where philosophy, art, science, all these things comes into picture. And that is manomaya. And then there is, okay, beyond all of these things, I'm not just this body or the mind or my thoughts or my intelligence. but I'm on the spirit level, soul level. So that is Vijnanamaya. And then there is, okay, I'm not just a spirit soul, I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. That is the Anandamaya realization. Verses 6 and 7, it's going to explain what are the different things that actually make up this body, and what are the different experiences or transformations that happen in this body because of the presence of the soul. Now, so far, we have discussed what is the field, which is the body, and who is the knower of the field, which is the soul and the super soul. But in the next two verses, what we are going to discuss is what what constitutes this body, and what are the changes that happen in this body because of the presence of the soul. And of course, when the soul leaves, still the body deteriorates. There is some change in the body, but when the soul is present, there are emotions, there are much more experience that is gained through this field or the body. I hope I'm making sense. So far in the first five verses, we have only discussed about what is the field, which is the body, and who's the knower of the field, the soul and the super soul. Now we're going to see the components of the field and the transformations and interactions in the field. So what are the components? But Krishna says the field includes Mahabhuta, means the five great elements. We're going to see them in detail though. Ego, the intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, the five sense objects, and the mind. So he's putting everything, all the gross and subtle elements that makes up the body. He has so already spoken in the 7th chapter also. So here he is adding more details to it. And what are the transformations and interactions in the field? He's saying desire, hatred, happiness, distress, and then the various life symptoms and convictions. These are all expressions of the field's workings. We're going to see them in detail. And this is what we call as experience, right? Desire, hatred, happiness, distress. These are all the things that actually makes up the happiness. So that's why we titled it as the anatomy of experience. So these are all the experiences that we go through in this life: the desire, hatred, happiness, distress, and all these things. So that's why Krishna is giving an anatomy of experience. How is it exactly happening? So Mahabhutas, the five great elements, are the earth, water, fire, air, and ether. They are totally five in number. And then there are the subtle elements, which is which is the false ego, intelligence, which is buddhi, and then there is the unmanifested modes of nature, which is the pradhana, from which everything is coming. So we do have the influence of the modes of nature within us. So that is the three. Jnana Indriyas means there is knowledge acquiring senses, which are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So we acquire information through these five senses. And then there are the motor organs, the karmendriyas, the working senses. Mahabhuta and Pancha Mahabhuta are different. No, actually, Bhuta and Pancha Mahabhuta are very same usually. Sometimes the number is specified, but usually Mahabhutas are earth, water, fire, air, and ether, like that. So the karmendriyas, the working senses, are the voice, the hands, the legs, the anus, and the genitals. So these five are the working senses through which some action is done. And internal senses, the mind is the internal sense. If the mind is not here, then whatever is being spoken, whatever is being seen, it does not register. So mind is the leader of all these senses. If the mind goes, then the attention goes, then sometimes there is awareness also goes. Sense objects are the smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. So the body is made up of all of these things. So these are 24, 20 and 4, 24 elements that make up the body alone. And the 25th element is the soul, and the 26th is the Paramatma, the super soul. But we are just seeing what are the elements that makes up the body itself. So there are 24 elements according to the Vedic paradigm that makes up the body. Okay, the body is there. But what are the transformations and the interactions that happens in this body? So desire, the urge to possess something or attain something pleasurable. So that is called as ichcha. And dvesha is a rejection of what is unpleasant, or like just threatening, just hatred towards something. So the aversion. So I want this and I don't want this. So that ichcha and dvesha, these are two very strong interactions that happens within the body. Sukham and the experience itself. Desiring is something, but having it, the positive experience of achieving something that is pleasurable, arising from the fulfillment of desires, the experience that comes from fulfilling what we want, that is called as sukham, happiness. Dukkham is the painful reaction when our desires are not achieved, or when something we don't want happens. We achieve something, but we did not want it to happen. So that is also not having what we want and having what we don't want. They both can lead to dukkham, distress or suffering. Ataha is the bodily aggregate. That is the putting the body and the mind and the senses all together. There is a form which is given. That form is also part of the transformation, because there is birth, there is old age, there is death, there is dwindling. So all these things, there are 6 levels of transformations that happens within this aggregate, and that gives a rise to a lot of these feelings also. I'm getting old, or my beauty is going away. So those things can create. So this whole material combination of body, mind and senses also creates all these interactions. So if, say for example, if one of my senses is not present, so then some amount of my experience can be affected. So they all coming together is also part of the transformation, and they also go through transformation. I start losing memory, I'll start losing sight, all these things. So Chetana is the consciousness. How can consciousness be part of the field? We know consciousness is like spiritual, is the soul is different from the body. So why is Krishna calling Chetana here? Because this is not, Krishna is not speaking about the spiritual consciousness, the soul. He's not speaking about the soul. He's speaking about when the soul is identifying itself with the body, there is a certain amount of consciousness that is projected onto the body. This is me. So, in that level, that consciousness is attached to the body. And that consciousness is because of the interaction of the soul and the body and the misidentification of the soul with the body. So, that is why that material consciousness is put as part of the transformation. Because, say, for example, I want ice cream, and somebody, and I buy, and then I keep it on my table. I'm about to eat, and I go to washroom and come back, and I see somebody else is eating it. So because I have projected my attachment on that ice cream, so now I'm going to feel all the emotions. So it is all related to the body and the mind. Because my consciousness is now bodily consciousness, I have projected it on the bodily level. So that is why that bodily material consciousness is the reason for all of these changes. So that's why that Chetana is also included here. The moment I start detaching myself from the bodily consciousness, then immediately I can control my emotions. I'll be like, it's okay, I can have another ice cream, it's fine, thank you, it's fine, like you have it. So the moment that what happens, it's very easy. I have detached. So the changes in the consciousness is not happening. There is the desire and the hatred and the happiness and the distress. Those things are not coming up. So that is why when the consciousness is evolved, is beyond the bodily consciousness, then that is not, the changes don't occur in the body. So that is why, or the mind. That's why that bodily consciousness is included here. And then because of all these things, we develop some convictions. Yes, ice cream tastes good. Bitter God is crazy. Who eats something bitter like that? So each one, we all have different convictions. And another person say, you must be crazy to think bitter God is not good. It's so amazing. I love the taste of it. And it's the best vegetable you can eat. I'm like, who eats bitter God? So we all develop different kind of convictions based on our experiences in this world. We develop strong beliefs and internal frameworks that shape our reactions and experiences in this world. So this is all part of the transformation that is happening within the body. And Krishna is saying, don't take it very seriously. But also on the spiritual level, but yes, you need to eat, you need to understand your emotions and process them. That part is there. But still, stopping it at that level is not for humans. Humans are supposed to go beyond that. So Gita's psychological map is basically given in the 7th verse. It's focusing all the inner states. You go to any psychology study, it's pretty much studying those emotions of desire, hatred, happiness and distress. There may be much more details, but this is what we are studying on the level of mind and intelligence and ego. The awareness that we are trying to understand is how to manage aversions and attachments. That is the whole therapy field of psychiatry and all these things. It is a very elaborate field, so I'm not trying to demean them, but just by saying, but pretty much we are trying to understand. So why am I excited about this and why am I not excited about this? So why is this giving me a trauma and how can I fix this? So that emotional level of awareness and studying those interactions of ichcha, dvesha, sukham and dukkha on a very deeper level, not just on the bodily level, on a very deeper level, but still it is distinguished or it is disconnected from the soul, then it again can be incomplete. But when we have the awareness of the soul and still we have that awareness of our emotions and feelings and mind, then it can be helpful. It can help us process things better and gradually raise ourselves beyond the level of the mind. But of course, the spiritual practice is the thing that which detaches us from the mind ultimately. So the Gita psychological map is given in the verse 13.7, which focuses on the inner states of happiness and distress and desire and hatred. So it acknowledges the emotional and mental turbulence as part of the material field. So yes, it is acknowledging these emotions, but it is distinguishing that from the experiencer itself. Yes, you are not just your emotions. So it leads us to disidentify and step back so we can actually look things from a detached perspective. Jealousy and dvesha, they are in some ways the same. They are all like can be the what do you call they're all material emotions. Kama, krodha, moha, mada, matsarya, and all of these things, they're all like just what do you call different flavors of those feelings. They're all coming from the root causes. I like this, I don't like this. I want this, I don't want this. It's all coming from that place, all the other things. They're all the root causes. So that is why here Krishna is just focusing on ichcha and dvesha, because the ichcha and the dvesha, the desire and the hatred, can lead to all the other things. As when my desire can transform into lust or greed, or when someone else has it, then I may be envious or jealous, and when I don't get it, I can become angry. And all of this is basically keeping me in illusion, and I can become proud when I get what I want, and when I have more than others, then I can become proud. So this is all based on the two things, that is ichcha and dvesha, desire and aversion. I hope that makes sense. So basically understanding this verse can help us step back, because Krishna moves from listing the external components of the body to inner transformations. So the vikara that is happening within this field, like the desire, the aversion, the pleasure, the pain. So Gita identifies the emotions and reactions not as signs of the soul's nature. It is identifying it as the modifications of the field itself. Why? Because they are temporary, observable, and transformable. That is why our emotions and the reactions are temporary, and we can see that, and we can also change it. That is why they are considered as part of the material field. I'll go there, Purva, because it's a very huge topic. Unless the whole Vedic creation theory, it can be very confusing. So I'll come there, but I will keep it brief. And also, this particular verse 13.7, the verse even includes consciousness, Chetana, as part of the field. As we discussed, it's not the original spiritual consciousness. We are speaking about the conditioned material consciousness, which is absorbed in the world and the body. And that is why that is part of the transformation of the field. And by calling these emotions vikara, what Krishna is teaching us is that the experience is not just you. You are the one who is observing the experiences. So this is the essential psychological and spiritual awareness that Krishna is giving, that how can you engage without entanglement? Because the moment you start thinking, okay, I am feeling happy, I am feeling angry, it's very different from I am angry and I am happy. Creating that distance can give us more time to process it better. So our desires, emotions, and convictions are not who we are. They are the movements of the field. We are the observer and not the observed. So Krishna is trying to differentiate the soul from the body very clearly through this process of Sankhya. That's why he is taking pains to explain all these things. So the detailed analysis of 13.6 and 7 is in order to help us to differentiate what is the body and what is the soul. And that body is not just the physical body. It involves all the emotions, it involves all the convictions, it involves all the determinations and the desires, the likings and the dislike. Everything is part of that body and the mind and everything. So that's why he defines the components of the body as ego, intelligence, and mind. Everything is part of the field, kshetra. That is why Krishna is not is using the word kshetra and not using the word deha. He's not using the straightforward word of body. Rather, he is using the word field, because the body sometimes may not include the mind. The body sometimes may not include our emotions. When we say the body, it may not always very clear that it includes our convictions. But when you say kshetra, field, that's why Krishna is describing what are the components of the field here. So it is little bit more than just the body. It includes everything as part of the body and the mind and the feelings and everything. And basically this is to distinguish ourselves. Okay, if I am not my emotions, if I am not, say for if I am not any of these things, it's very easy to identify what is on the screen. It's easy to say, okay, I am not my eyes, I'm not my ears, I'm not the smell, I'm not the taste, I'm not the earth, I'm not water. It's very easy. But it's very difficult for us to usually think that I'm not the desires I have, I'm not the anger that I have against someone. I'm not the happiness that I'm looking for. I'm not the convictions. We think, oh, this is me. When someone has a different belief, then we don't even mind killing them. The world, when people are belonging to a different religion or a different belief or have a different, you like a different political party, you like a different football, what do you call it? Different team in football or in any other games or as part of the sports, then immediately you differ, you have a different political ideology, you have a different social ideology. Okay, so that you're different, and people wouldn't mind even killing people if when they differ. So that's what is Krishna is trying to say. No, you are not just your beliefs. The soul is different from all of these things. So basically he's trying to help us detached from the field and understand that we are not the field, but we are the observer of the field. The mind reacts, the field transforms. The mind sometimes is happy, the mind is sometimes like angry, likes, it does not like. So it constantly is changing. The field is also transforming. After 20 years, we will not look the same, but the soul remains unchanged. So Krishna is helping us go to that unchangeable part of who we are really, beyond the level of, beyond the layers of the body and the mind. That's the whole purpose of this chapter, to recognize that I am not this body, I'm a spirit soul. And then there is a supreme Lord, that is the super soul. So understanding God also, nature, enjoyer, and the consciousness. So why this can be very helpful, because we are sometimes very overwhelmed by our emotions. So Krishna is helping us to see us, ourselves, separate from our emotions. So is this me or just my reactions? So it's a very helpful knowledge, because usually the human behavior is based on one's emotions, one's past experiences, that leads to beliefs, perceptions, biases. So this is the essential human behavior. This is what makes a human behavior in general. Our emotions, conditioning, and cognitive frameworks that we use to reason. And this is all Krishna is pretty much saying. This is all within the field. So we are different from that. We experience emotions. We are not just the emotions. We hold beliefs. We are not the beliefs. So freedom begins with this inner distancing and detachment. Like with this inner, not repression in the sense, not avoiding it, but having a detachment can help us approach the situation with level headedness. If I so overwhelmed with my anger or with my happiness, then my ability to think and make decisions can get skewed. So Krishna is saying, on a spiritual level, on the life level, freedom begins with this inner distance. Even if someone hurts us, we won't become so affected by it, that sometimes, like I've seen, like people just commit suicide because someone actually rejected them, someone actually scolded them, because people just become so absorbed with these things. So that leads to a lot of misery in this society. That over identification with the body, with the mind, leads to most of or all of the suffering in this world. And especially when we are like teenagers, we are even grown-ups. So it becomes too much identification that they don't see that they have a existence beyond all these things, beyond these relationships, beyond their likes and dislikes, beyond their achievements, beyond their accolades. We exist beyond all of that. They all have meaning because we exist. So that's what Krishna is trying to say. So the freedom begins with that inner distance. So observe your emotional and mental activity as field based. It's not me. It's create a distance, then it could be very helpful to understand the situation and approach the situation appropriately. So it helps us to understand why we feel what we feel and how to step back from those feelings and how to reclaim our spiritual identity through clarity and connection. So just this one section, Krishna, we can see that how much Krishna is going deep. It's just that it's too much that sometimes we may feel, oh, it's very complicated. That's how detailed Krishna is going just in a single verse. Desire, emotion, conviction are not who we are. They are the waves on the field of experience. And Krishna is teaching us how to witness them and not become them. And just give me a few more minutes, we are done. So basically, concluding these two verses, 6 and 7, that Krishna is speaking about the components of the field, speaks about the gross field of action, and speaks about the subtle field of action. However, the soul is the witness of these transformations, is different from the gross field and the subtle field. So this witness is the knower of the field, that is soul, and the knower of all fields is Paramatma. So this is another way Krishna is defining the soul, that he is defining by negative definition. Instead of saying this is soul, he is saying this is all the not, this is all not soul. So he is going in the definition in the negative sense. So this is all body and its field and its interactions. So by that he is distinguishing the soul through a negative definition. So the two knowers are further discussed in the following verses from 8 to 12, and the practices that is required in order to realize these two knowers. That's what we are going to discuss next week. So far, we have discussed what is the field, what is the knower of the, who is the knower of the field, and what is the process required to understand that, really realize it. That's what we are going to discuss next week. And why is Krishna speaking these? Because Krishna is trying to give a summary of the Sankhya philosophy, which is the Jnana Yoga part that Arjuna is asking. He's not trying to give for the sake of dry intellectual analysis. He's using this particular discussion to help Arjuna distinguish body and soul again, to realize that emotions and experiences are transformations of matter and not the soul itself. The soul is never changing. So reclaim his identity as Kshetragya. Don't identify with the body, identify with the soul. So understand that all of this is preparation for bhakti. So when the soul, even if it does not understand these things, but engages in the bhakti practice, gradually it can come to the level of detaching itself from the body. The consciousness can evolve. This is all a preparation for bhakti, but bhakti is not dependent on this. So when the soul reconnects with Krishna, naturally all the knowledge comes. And ultimately, Krishna's goal is to lead Arjuna from analysis to purpose. His understanding is to analyzing all these things is to convince Arjuna to actually engage in his service of fighting. So science is a study of matter, but Sankhya is not just a study of matter, but here the idea of studying all these things is basically to study what matters, that is the soul and the super soul. All of these things are discussed in order to point us towards the soul and the super soul. So science is just a study of matter. They don't realize anything beyond matter. And they won't be able to study if they were not alive. The scientists have consciousness, and that's why they are able to study the matter. But tomorrow when they die, the body will become part of the matter. So science is just a study of matter, even though they all are studying the matter with their own consciousness, which is so different from matter. But they don't have anything to explain where is that consciousness coming from. But spirituality is a study of what matters, which is the soul and the super soul. And of course, lessons is distinguishing self from body is the foundation of spiritual life. And self knowledge is not surface level. because a lot of self-help they say today. Self-help is so famous, but hardly there is any self-knowledge in the self-help, because that self that they are identifying is either the body, predominantly the emotions, the mind, determination, and how can I become motivated. So that's very much on the level of the mind. There is a very little on the level of the soul. So the self knowledge is not surface level, is a deeper one. So real knowledge, what Krishna says in this chapter, is to distinguish between matter and spirit. And we can see how often we are driven by desire or the aversion without even realizing it, and how much it affects the quality of our life. So many times we want something or we don't want something, and we are not even sure. We are not even aware that, because we are not aware, we don't know whether to go deeper into this particular need or not. And this is a quote that I picked up. Like, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. It's just cheesy. So don't ask me what it means. It can refer to the soul. It can certainly refer to the super soul. So I just thought it's very nice. So I put it here. I hope it makes sense. So thank you, everyone. So we'll see in the following week from verses 8 onwards. And so far, Krishna is teaching that real education is that which liberates one from the cycle of birth and death. That's why he's discussing all this knowledge so elaborately about the body and the soul and what happens within the body and everything. Why worry so much about all these things? Because the idea is to make us understand that we are not this body, and just being occupied with the body and its emotions can never help us get liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So that in that focus, this whole education is being provided by Krishna.